overall, I don't expect a lot of movement today because everyone's waiting for what's going to happen tomorrow, right? People want to know what Powell is going to say. 25 basis points or 50 basis point. Right now, still, the percentages are towards, or the higher percentages towards the 25 basis point. But there is a good chance we get 50 basis points, right? Especially when we're getting numbers revised and they're revised in a bad way, right? Like non-farm payroll numbers. I covered this last night, but I don't know how you could be off by 808,000 jobs. So somehow, sometimes you see revisions like, okay, maybe they revised last quarter or last week or something like that, but they revised for an entire year and they realized that they were down or off by 818,000 jobs. How does that make sense? When you have the numbers, you have the numbers. Where do all of a sudden do you lose numbers after 8 months of this year? It doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you think about it, maybe it does, because this paves the way for steeper cuts for Powell, right? That's the only thing I can think of, because Powell could use this as an excuse, saying, well, job market is, the labor force is not as strong as we once thought with the revised numbers. So, it gives them ammunition to cut and cut more. And that's actually not bad. That's what we want, right? And pretty soon, we're going to probably see more economic data come out that's showing the economy is a little bit worse, and maybe more revisions and so forth, right? So yeah, today, I don't know. I don't think we're going to see much movement, at least not in the broader market. Maybe with Bitcoin, that's a different story. Bitcoin does what it wants, but the broader market's probably going to be somewhat stagnant today because everyone's waiting for Powell to give a speech at Jackson Hole tomorrow. But here's the thing. There are a lot of traditional stock investors out there and in this chat. And a lot of people will keep saying, well, look at the S&P 500. It just keeps going higher and higher and higher. And it's at an all-time high. So, why would I invest in anything else? Why don't I just invest in stocks or an index fund? Well, here's the thing. If you compare the S&P 500, if you compare it to Bitcoin, not USD, you track it against Bitcoin, you'll realize that the exact opposite has been happening. It's been trending lower and lower and lower and lower. And that's what most people don't understand. Everyone base their comparisons against the dollar, right? But when you compare assets against each other, especially against Bitcoin, which we know is the fastest appreciating asset there is, well, then it's a different story, right? So this is why Bitcoin is unlike any other asset. It is the greatest hedge against inflation, and it's the ultimate store of value. This is why we need to accumulate while we still can, while things are cheap, before prices become out of control due to inflation and due to other factors, right? But I think that's a very, very interesting chart. Now, as for this consolidation period that we're in, there are many reasons why it is ending soon. Okay, one is Bitcoin is ripe for a short squeeze. I mentioned that. We have a massive amount of shorts piled up right now. You could see, this is hard to read, but you could see around 62,000 how there's a lot of activity. Okay, so the bears have piled on the shorts right around 62,000, which is why we haven't been able to break it recently. But when we do, we're going to get that short squeeze. We got $15 billion worth of shorts piled on between 62,000 and 72,000. $15 billion worth. Okay. And we get a little push. We get a little squeeze. We're going to get a lot of shorters wrecked, which is fine by me, but it's going to drive us higher. Way, way higher. At this point, I still don't understand why anyone wants to short Bitcoin. It's mostly due to greed, I'm sure. But hey, you never want to bet against Bitcoin. You really just don't. It's the surest way to wreck yourself. So as for ETFs, yesterday we had a modest 39.5 million inflow. Still, that makes 5 consecutive days of inflow, which isn't bad. Smaller inflow days, but still, nevertheless, they're inflows, not outflows. Yesterday, besides Grayscale, the only one that's still outflowing, everyone else added. BlackRock actually surprisingly took a little bit, a small amount, 8.4 million. Fidelity, 10 million. ARK, 10 million. And others added a few. But overall, these ETFs are not going to stop. More and more and more inflows, right? That's what the big boys are doing. That's what we should be doing because Bitcoin is the greatest asset, the greatest appreciated asset that we have. And everything looks like this chart when you compare it to Bitcoin. It's really that simple. Now, BlackRock and Larry Fink, they have done the most within the shortest amount of time ever. Now they have, according to Arkham, more crypto in cumulative than Grayscale. And keep in mind, Grayscale has been operating for what? Over 10 years? And Grayscale doesn't just have Bitcoin and Ethereum. They have trust for like a dozen of other crypto. But since the ETFs came out, for whatever reason, I still don't understand why so many are selling from Grayscale. It's just massive dumping, and it's all going into BlackRock's wallets, right? So now BlackRock officially has more crypto than Grayscale, and BlackRock has only been accumulating in their ETFs for 8 months versus like a decade for Grayscale. That shows you how big BlackRock is, how much money they have, and why it's so important for the rest of us, the retail investors, why we need to stay strong, not fall for the FUD, and continue to keep accumulating. And there's so many really good reasons why we should continue to accumulate, besides being a store of value, besides being a hedge against inflation. It's a great medium of exchange too. It's the greatest network that we have. Franklin Templeton's CEO yesterday came out and said that people are underestimating this, that Bitcoin's network processed 36.6 trillion transactions, which is more than MasterCard and Visa combined. Think about that for a second. Everyone in the world is using MasterCard and Visa. And yet Bitcoin processed more transactions than both of them combined. That's staggering, right? So even as a medium exchange, Bitcoin and Bitcoin network is winning. And it's the only decentralized network out there that can't be shut down by any government. You can shut down Visa. You can shut down MasterCard pretty easily. Any of the agencies could go to these companies and deactivate your account. They can stop your transaction, right? The transaction could be reversed. And there are parts of the world where you can't use a credit card, right? But Bitcoin has none of those barriers. Bitcoin, you can send Bitcoin to anywhere in the world as long as they have a wallet and they have internet access. You know, anyone in the world can receive your Bitcoin within minutes, right? For a stupidly small amount of fees, but there's no middleman. No one could stop the transaction. No one could try to shut down the network. It just won't happen, right? So it's just really staggering if you think about it. Even as a network, it's the greatest one that we have, one that has never been hacked before, one that has 100% uptime too. There's no other network that could say that.